On Mashujaa Day, October 2021, President Uhuru Kenyatta stood before a jubilant nation. With one announcement, he lifted the night-to-dawn curfew that had weighed on Kenyans for nearly 2 years.
And direct that the nationwide dusk-to-dawn curfew that has been in effect from the 27th of March 2020 be and is hereby vacated with...
But what the president could not have known was that this very proclamation would set into motion something far darker. Behind the towering, razor-wired walls of Kamiti Maximum Prison, the final piece of a chilling puzzle had just clicked into place. Deep inside condemned Block A, in the notorious cell number 6, 3 men were waiting. Not ordinary inmates, but convicted terrorists. Hardened, calculating, and impatient.
Officers from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations have launched a manhunt for 3 terror suspects who escaped from the Kamiti Maximum Prison in the early hours of Monday. And a 60 million shilling reward is up for grabs to anyone with information that may lead to their arrest.
Masharaf Abdallah and Yasin Juma, both loyal Al-Shabaab operatives, had been captured years earlier after a foiled attempt to storm Parliament in 2012, weapons strapped to their bodies. For their audacity, they were handed 22 years. Then came Mohammed Ali Abika. His crime: direct links to the massacre at Garissa University College, where 147 young lives were brutally cut short. For that, he was condemned to 41 years. In 2020, a 4th joined them. Joseph Juma Odiambo, a man from Mumias, arrested in Mandera as he tried to slip across the border into Somalia. His sentence, 15 years. Together, these 4 men, broken by time, bound by anger, shared one conviction. They did not believe justice had been served. Appeals had dragged on for years, leaving only bitterness and a growing determination to take back control by any means necessary. Their solution was as simple as it was dangerous: escape. But escaping Kamiti was no small feat. They needed a crack in the system. An insider. A man who could look the other way. And so, with Abika's outside connections funneling money into the prison, they found him. A corruptible guard known only as Warden X. A man with access, authority, and a willingness to betray his oath. From that moment, the plan was no longer fantasy. It was real. The countdown had begun. This warden was more than just an accomplice. He was the key. With his position, he had unrestricted access to the very tools the prisoners would need to break free. Hacksaws, chisels, ropes, even nails, items that, in the wrong hands, could transform into weapons of liberation. But his role didn't end there. Through him, money flowed in from the outside world. Funds that would grease the right palms, silence the right voices, and keep suspicion at bay. Most dangerously of all, he became their eyes and ears. From him, the foreland of the prison security rotations, the blind spots in surveillance, and the exact working shifts of the officers on duty. Every update he whispered to them tightened the noose around Kamiti's security and loosened the chains of cell number 6. To the world outside, Kamiti Maximum Prison was impenetrable. But inside its cold, concrete walls, the silent alliance was forming. An alliance that would soon test the limits of Kenya's most secure correctional facility. The question was no longer if they would attempt to escape, but when. The information Warden X provided allowed the 4 to keep their plot hidden during shifts when other officers were on duty. But first, they needed a cover. They drafted a letter to the prison welfare office complaining about the bitter cold in their cell. The request, framed in the language of prison reforms, was granted. Extra blankets were delivered. What the officials didn't know was that these blankets were not for warmth. They would be cut, stitched, and knotted into a rope and ladder strong enough to scale Kamiti's 10-foot perimeter wall. With the blankets secured, Warden X smuggled in the rest. A chisel, blades, scissors, hooks, even bars of soap, reams of paper, and broomsticks. Every item had a purpose. The chisel, to drill through the wall. The paper, dyed to match the cell walls, pasted with soap to cover the hole. The broomsticks, to measure the wall's height. And the scissors, to shred the blankets into rope. Day after day, while Warden X was on duty, the prisoners chipped away at concrete. By night, they tied knots and whispered prayers. Then, fortune struck. On Mashujaa Day, President Kenyatta lifted the curfew, removing their biggest obstacle, moving unnoticed in the dead of night. Their confidence grew a week later when fellow inmate Ijilva Bwaya was released, only to mysteriously disappear, allegedly abducted by anti-terror police. To the fore, it was proof. Even if they served their terms, freedom would never come. Escape was the only option. They chose November 15, 2021. A night when certain officers, less vigilant than others, would be on duty. Several CCTV cameras were conveniently broken. Transportation was arranged, the Toyota Probox to whisk them to Machakos, then another vehicle to ferry them to Somalia. Just after midnight, they squeezed through the hole in their cell wall, scaled the perimeter, and vanished into the night. Within minutes, they were inside the waiting Probox, racing toward Machakos. At 3:30 a.m., their plan faltered. The second car never arrived. Stranded, they boarded a public matatu toward Kitui. But luck ran out. A sharp-eyed villager spotted them walking and alerted authorities. The escapees were swiftly captured and dragged back to Kamiti under heavy guard. Their trial added one final twist. Before the judge, the men insisted that Warden X, who had armed them with tools and knowledge, was never charged. Even the very tools he supplied had vanished from the official evidence. The escape that shook Kenya ended not in Somalia, but back in the same prison from which it began. Yet questions lingered about who really pulled the strings and how deep the rot went inside Kamiti's walls.